Stories, fables, ghostly tales.
Good day, my lovely listeners. Right now, it's bucketing down over here in WA. Positively boring. So, I'm going to keep my intro and outro quick here, because where I live, it's notoriously known that the power will go out in super rainy or windy environments. And I'm going to err on the side of caution here, mates, and do a very quick intro and thank yous up front so as to ensure I have enough time to upload before the crazy weather sets in. And then I'm possibly without power or internet for a couple of hours, which definitely styes my opportunity to upload within tonight's time frame. So, a huge thank you to all my Patreon supporters. My old Night Tea Titan Maya, who grabs this podcast by the pants and throws it to the moon. My two fantastic White Tea Warlords, Leza Balzuka and Paige Kramer, whose wonderful dedication and support means this podcast can positively shine. And of course, my Earl Grey enforcers that enforce the essence of Earl Grey awesomeness. I have Chad Warren, Just Heather, Juicebox Andy, Peter Raffelli, Tasha Moncrief, Dolphin and Cow, Michelangelo Yacone, Tea Time Drinker 1, and Divided by Zero. All of you are simply amazing, and I'm truly lucky to have your support. Today's episode is a continuation of The Flower of Old Japan, namely because many of my listeners really enjoyed it, so I pushed back the creepy tales and thought I'd share more of the poetry. And the more I read of these, the more I enjoy them. So sit back with me, pull up a chair, and let's share a story-poem combo like no other. Enjoy, you lovelies. Have a wonderful day or night, and as always, till next we meet. The Hideous Hermit. Ah, what wonders round us rose, when we dared to pause and look, curious things that seemed all toes. Goblins from a picture book, ants like witches 4 feet high, waving all their skinny arms glared at us and wandered by, muttering their ancestral charms. Stately forms in green and gold, armor strutted through the glades, just as Hamlet's ghost, we're told, mooned among the midnight shades. Once a sort of devil came, scattering broken trees about, winged with leather, eyed with flame. He was but a moth, no doubt. Here and there above us clomb feathery clumps of palm on high. Those were ferns, of course, but some really seemed to touch the sky. Yes, and down one fragrant glade, listening as we onward stole, half delighted, half afraid. Dong, we heard the harebells toll. Something told us what that gleam down the glen was brooding o'er. Something told us in a dream what the bells were tolling for. Something told us there was fear, horror, peril on our way. Was it far, or was it near? Near, we heard the night wind say. Toll, the music reeled and pealed through the vast and sombre trees, where a rosy light revealed dimmer, sweeter mysteries. And, like petals of the rose, fairy fans in beauty beat, light in light. What were those rhymes we heard the night repeat? Toll and dream within a dream, upon an isle of rose and blue, up the music's perfumed stream came the words, and then we knew that in the distant glen, once again the case was tried. Hark! Who killed Cock Robin then? A tiny voice replied. I killed Cock Robin. I? And who are you, Sir Pray? Growled a voice that froze our marrow. Who? We heard the murderer say. Lord, sir, I am the famous Sparrow, and this is my bow and arrow. I killed Cock Robin. Then, with one great indrawn breath, such a sighing and a sobbing rose all around us for the death of poor Cock Robin. Oh, we couldn't bear to wait, even to hear the murderer's fate, which we'd often wished to know, sitting in the fireside glow, and with hot revengeful looks searched for in the nursery books, for the robin and the wren, and such friends to mortal men, such dear friends to mortal men. Toll, and though the woods once more stole we drenched with fragrant dew, toll the harebell's burden bore deeper meaning than we knew. Still it told us there was fear, horror, peril on the way. Was it far, or was it near? Near, we heard the night wind say. Near, and once or twice we saw something like a monstrous eye, something like a hideous claw, steal between us and the sky. Still we hummed a dauntless tune, trying to think such things might be, glimpses of the fairy moon hiding in some hairy tree. Yet round us as we went, through the glades of rose and blue, sweetness with the horror blent, wonder wild in scent and hue. Here Aladdin's cavern yawned, jewelled thick with gorgeous dyes. There a head of clover dawned, like a cloud in eastern skies. Hills of topaz, lakes of dew, fairy cliffs of crystal sheen, passed we, and the forest blue, sea of branches tossed between. Once we saw a griffin make one soft iris as it passed, like the curving meteor's wake, over the forest far and fast. Winged with purple, breathing flame, crimson-eyed, we saw him go. Where? Ah, could it be the same cockchafer we used to know? Valley lilies overhead, high aloof in clustered spray, far through heaven their splendor spread, glimmering like the Milky Way. Mammoths' fathers call extinct, creatures that the cavemen feared. Through that forest walked and blinked, through that jungle crawled and leered. Beasts no Nimrod ever knew, woolly bears of black and red, crocodiles who wanted who ever dared to see them fed. Were they lizards? If they were, they could swallow us with ease, but they slumbered quietly there, in among the mighty trees. Red and silver, blue and green, played the moonlight of their scales. Golden eyes they had, and lean, crooked legs with cruel nails. Yet again, no faint and far, came the shadow of a cry, like the calling of a star to its brothers in the sky. Like an echo in a cave, where young mermaids sound their shells, like the wind across the grave, bright with scent of lily bells. Like a fairy hunter's horn sounding in some purple glen, sweet reveille till the morn, and the fairy quest again. Then all around it surged a song we could never understand, though it lingered with us long, and it seemed so sad and grand. And this is how that song went. Little boy blue, come blow up your horn, summon the day of deliverance in. We are weary of bearing the burden of scorn, as we yearn for the home that we shall never win. For here there is weeping and sorrow and sin, and the poor and the weak are spoiled for the strong. Ah, when shall the song of ransom begin? When the world has grown weary with waiting so long. Little blue boy, you are gallant and brave. There was never a doubt in those clear, bright eyes. Come challenge the grim, dark gates of the grave, as the skylark sings to those infinite skies. This world is a dream, say the old and the wise, and its rainbows arise over the false and the true. But the mists of the morning are made of our sighs. Ah, shatter them, scatter them, little boy blue. Little boy blue, if the child heart knows, sound but a note as a little one may, and the thorns of the desert shall bloom with the rose, and the healer shall wipe all tears away. Little boy blue, we are all astray. The sheep's in the meadow, the cow's in the corn. Ah, set the world right, as a little one may. Little boy blue, come blow up your horn. Yes, and there between the trees, circled with a misty gleam, like the light a mourner sees, round an angel in a dream. Was it he? Oh, brave and slim, straight and clad in airy blue, lifting to his lips the dim golden horn? We never knew. Never, for a witch's hair flooded all the moonlight sky, and he vanished then and there, in the twinkling of an eye, just as either boyish cheek puffed to set the world aright. Ere the golden horn could speak, round him flowed the purple night. At last we came to a round black road that tunneled through the woods and showed, oh, so we thought, a good clear way back to the upper lands of day. Great silken cables overhead in many a mighty mesh were spread. netting the rounded arch, no doubt, to keep the weight of leafage out. And as the tunnel narrowed down, so thick and close the cords had grown, no leaf could through their meshes stray, and the faint moonlight died away. Only a strange grey glimmer shone to guide our weary footsteps on, until, tired out, we stood before the end, a great grey silken door. Then from out a weird old wicket, overgrown with shaggy hair, like a weird and wicked eyebrow, round a weird and wicked eye, two great eyeballs and a beard from one ghastly moment peered at our faces with a sudden stealthy stare. Then the door was opened wide, and a hideous hermit cried, with a shy and soothing smile from out his lair, "Won't you walk into my parlour? I can make you cozy there." And we couldn't quite remember where we'd heard that phrase before, as the great grey-bearded ogre stood beside his open door, but an echo seemed to answer from a land beyond the sky. "Won't you walk into my parlour?" said the spider to the fly. Then we looked a little closer at the ogre as he stood, with his great red eyeballs glowing like two torches in a wood, and his mighty speckled belly, and his dreadful clutching claws, and his nose a horny parrot's beak, his whiskers and his jaws. Yet he seemed so sympathetic, and we saw two tears descend, as he murmured,
"I'm so ugly, but I've lost my dearest friend. I tell you most emphatically, I'm yearning in my soul."
And right along his parrot's beak we saw the teardrops roll.
"He's an arrant sentimentalist."
We heard a distant sigh. "Won't you weep upon my bosom?" said the spider to the fly.
"If you'd dreamed my dreams of beauty, if you'd seen my works of art, if you'd felt the cruel hunger that is gnawing at my heart, and the grief that never leaves me, and the love I can't forget, for I loved with all the letters in the Chinese alphabet, oh, you'd all come in to comfort me. You ought to help the weak, and I'm full of melting moments, and I know the thing you seek."
And the haunting echo answered,
"Well, I'm sure you ought to try. There's a duty to one's neighbor," said the spider to the fly.
So we walked into his parlour, though a gleam was in his eye, and it was the prettiest parlour that ever we did spy. But we saw by the uncertain, misty light, shot through with gleams of many a silken curtain, broidered o'er with dreadful dreams, that he locked the door behind us, so we stood with bated breath in a silence deep as death. There were scarlet gleams and crimson in the curious foggy grey, like the blood-red light that swims on old canals at fall of day, with the smoke of some great city, loops and droops in gorgeous veils, round the heavy purple barges' tawny sails. Where those creatures gagged and muffled, see there, by that severed head, was it but a breeze that ruffled those dark curtains splashed with red? Ruffled the dark figures on them, made them moan like things in pain? How we wished that we were safe at home again. "Oh, we want to hear of Peterkin, good sir. You say you know. Won't you tell us? Won't you put us in the way we want to go?" So we pleaded, for he seemed so very full of sighs and tears, that we couldn't doubt his kindness, and we smothered all our fears. But he said,
"You must be crazy if you come to me for help. Why should I desire to send you to your horrid little whelp?"
And again the foolish echo made a far-away reply,
"Oh, don't come to me for comfort. Pray don't look to me for comfort. Heavens, you mustn't be so selfish," said the spider to the fly.
Still, when the King of Scotland, so to speak, was in a hole, he was aided by my brother, it's a story to console, the convict of the treadmill and the infant with the sum, for it teaches you to try again until your kingdoms come. The monarch dawdled in that hole for centuries of time, until my own twin brother rose and showed him how to climb. He showed him how to swing and sway upon a tiny thread, across a mighty precipice, and light upon his head, without a single fracture, and without a single pain, if he only did it frequently and tried again. And once again the whisper like a moral wandered by, "Perseverance is a virtue," said the spider to the fly. Then he moaned,
"My heart is hungry, but I fear I cannot eat. Of course I speak entirely now of spiritual meat." For I only fed an hour ago. But if we calmly sat, while I told you all my troubles in a confidential chat, it would give me such an appetite to hear you sympathize, and I should sleep the better. See, the tears are in my eyes. Dead yearnings are such dreadful things. Let's keep 'em all alive. Let's sit and talk a while, my dears. We'll dine, I think, at 5.
And he brought his chair beside us in his most engaging style, and began to tell his story with a melancholy smile.
You remember Miss Muffet, who sat on a tuffet, partaking of curds and whey? Well, I am the spider who sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. There was nothing against her, an elderly spinster, we're such a grammatical mate for a spider and a spinner. I swore I would win her, I knew I had met with my fate. That love was the purest, and strongest and surest I'd felt since my first thread was spun. I knew I am a boogie, but she's an old fogey, so why in the world did she run? When Bruce was in trouble, a spider, my double, encouraged him greatly, they say. Now why should the spider who sat down beside her have frightened Miss Muffet away? He seemed to have much more to tell, but we could scarcely be listening well, although we tried with all our might to look attentive and polite, for still afar we heard the thin, clear fairy call to Peterkin. Clear as a skylark's mounting song, it drew our wandering thoughts along. Afar it seemed, yet so nigh. Deep in our dreams it scaled the sky. In captive dreams that brooked no bars, it touched the love that moves the stars, and with sweet music's golden tether, it bound our hearts in heaven together. And within it a song was born. Wake, arise, the lake, the skies, fade into the fairy day. Come and sing before our king, heed not time the dotard grey. Time has given his crown to heaven. How long? Awake, away. Then, as the hermit rambled on, in one long listless monotone, we heard a wild and mournful groan come rumbling down the tunnelled way. A voice, an awful mourning bray, singing some old funeral lay. Then solemn footsteps, muffled, dull, approached as if they trod on wool, and as they nearer and nearer drew, we saw our host was listening too. His bulging eyes began to glow, like great red match-heads rubbed at night, and then he stole with a grim "Oh-ho!" to that grey old wicket where, out of sight, blandly rubbing his hands and humming, he could see at one glance whatever was coming. He had never been so jubilant or frolicsome before, as he scurried on his cruel hairy crutches to the door, and flung it open and most hospitably cried, "Won't you walk into my parlour? I've some little friends to tea. They'll be highly entertained to a man of sympathy, such as yourself must be." Then the man, for so he seemed, doubtless who'd lost his way, and was dwarfed as we had been, in his ancient suit of black, black upon the verge of green, entered like a ghost that dreamed sadly of some bygone day, and he never ceased to sing in that awful mournful bray. The door closed behind his back, he walked round us in a ring, and we hoped that he might free us, but his tears appeared to blind him, for he didn't seem to see us, and the hermit crept behind him like a cat about to spring. And the song he sang was this, and his nose looked very grand, as he sang it with a bliss which he could not understand, for his voice was very sad, while his nose was proud and glad. Rain, April, rain, by sunny, sunny tears, through the black boughs the robe of spring appears, yet for the ghosts of all the bygone years, rain, April, rain. Rain, April, rain, the rose will soon be glad. Spring with rejoice, a spring I, too, have had. A little while till I no more be sad. Rain, April, rain. And then the spider sprang, before we could breathe or speak, and one great scream outrang, as the terrible horny beak crunched into the sad man's head, and the terrible hairy claws clutched him around his middle.
And he opened his lantern jaws, and he gave one twist, one twiddle, one kick, and his sorrow was dead. And there, as he sucked his bleeding prey, the spider leered at us.
"You will do, my sweet little dears, for another day. But this is the sort I like, ha ha."
And there we stood in frozen fear, whiter than death, with bated breath. And lo, as we thought of Peterkin, father and home and Peterkin. Once more that music, clear and thin, clear as a skylark's mounting song, but nearer now, more sweet, more strong, drew all our wondering thought along, until it seemed a mystic sea of hidden delight and harmony began to ripple and rise all around the prison where our heart lay bound. And from sweet heaven's most rosy rim there swelled a distant marching hymn, which made the hideous hermit pause and listen with lank down dropped jaws, till with great bulging eyes of fear he sought the wicket again to peer along the tunnel, as like sweet rain we heard the still approaching strain, and under it the rhythmic beat of multitudinous marching feet. Nearer, nearer they rippled and rang, and this was the marching song they sang. A fairy band are we in fairyland, singing, marching we, hand in hand, singing, singing all day long. Some folk never heard a fairy song. Singing, singing, when the merry thrush is swinging on a springing spray, or when the witches that lives in gloomy caves and creeps by night among the graves calls a cloud across the day. Cease we never our fairy song, march we ever along, along, down the dale or up the hill, singing, singing still. And suddenly the hermit turned and ran with all his might through the back door of his parlour, as we thought of little Peterkin, and the great grey roof was shattered by a shower of rosy light, and the spider's house went floating, torn and tattered through the night, in a flight of prismy streamers, as we shout went up for Peterkin, and lo, the glistening fairy host stood there arrayed for fight, in arms of rose and green and gold, to lead us on to Peterkin. And all around us, rippling like a pearl and opal sea, the host of fairy faces winked in kindly hint of Peterkin, and all around the rosy glade a laugh of fairy glee. Watch spiders' streamers floating up from fragrant tree to tree, till the moonlight caught the gossamers, and oh, we wished for Peterkin. Each rope became a rainbow, but it made us ache to see such a fairy forest pomp without explaining it to Peterkin. Then all the glittering crowd, with a courtly gesture bowed, like a rosy jewelled cloud round a flame, as the King of Fairyland, very dignified and grand, stepped forward to demand whence we came. He'd a cloak of gold and green, such a caterpillar's spin, for the fairy ways, I ween, are very frugal. He'd a bow that he had borne since the crimson Eden morn, and a honeysuckle horn for his bugle. So we told our tale of fairy to the King of Fairyland, and asked if he could let us know the latest news of Peterkin, and he turned him with a courtly smile, and waved his jewelled wand, and cried, "Peace blossom, mustard seed, you know the old command. Well, these are little children, you must lead them on to Peterkin." Then he knelt, the King of Fairy knelt, his eyes were great and grand, as he took our hands and kissed them, saying, "Father loves your Peterkin." So out they sprang on either side, a light, fantastic fairy guide, to lead us to the land unknown, where little Peterkin was gone. And as we went with timid pace, we saw that every fairy face in all the moonlight host was wet with tears we never shall forget. The mystic hush that seemed to fade away like sound, and down the glade we passed beyond their zone of light. Then through the forest's purple night we trotted at a pleasant speed, with gay peace blossom and mustard seed. Shyly we surveyed our guides, as though the gloomy woods we went, in the light that the straggling moonbeams lent. We envied them their easy strides, peace blossoms in his crimson cap, and delicate suit of rose-leaf green, his crimson sash and his jewelled dagger, strutted along with an elegant swagger, which showed that he didn't care one rap for anything less than a fairy queen. His eyes were deep like the eyes of a poet, although his crisp and curly hair certainly didn't seem to show it. While Mustard Seed, with a devil-may-care, epigrammatic and pungent fellow, clad in a splendid suit of yellow, with emerald stars on his glittering breast, and eyes that shone with a diamond light that made you feel sure it would always be best. To tell him the truth, he was not perhaps quite so polite as Peach Blossom, but then who could be quite such a debonair fairy as he? We never could tell you one half that we heard and saw on that journey. For instance, a bird, 10 times as big as an elephant, stood by the side of a nest like a great thick wood. The cloud in glimmering wreaths were spread behind its vast and shadowy head, which rolled at us trembling below. Its eyes were like great black moons in those pale skies, and we feared he might take us, perhaps, for a worm. But he ruffled his breast with the sound of a storm, and snuggled his head with a careless disdain under his huge haunched wings again. And Mustard Seed said, as we stole through the dark, there was nothing to fear. It was only a lark. And so he cheered the way along with many a neat little epigram, while dear Peach Blossom before him swam on a billow of lovely moonlight song, telling us why they had left their home in Sherwood and had hither come to dwell in this magical scented clime, this dim old forest of sweet wild thyme. Men toil, he said, from morn till night, with bleeding hands and blinded sight, for gold, more gold. They have betrayed the trust that in their soul was laid. Their fairy birthright they have sold for little discs of mortal gold. And now they cannot even see the gold upon the greenwood tree, the wealth of coloured lights that pass in soft gradations through the grass, the riches of the love untold that wakes the day from grey to gold. And how soever the moonlight weaves magic webs among the leaves, Englishmen care little now for elves beneath the hawthorn bough. Nor if robins should return, dare they of an outlaw learn. For them the smallest flower is furled, mute is the music of the world, and unbelief has driven away beauty from the blossomed spray. Then Mustard Seed with diamond eyes taught us to be laughter-wise, and he showed us how that time is much less powerful than a rhyme, and that space is but a dream. For look, he said with eyes agleam, now you are become so small, you think the thyme of a forest tall, but underneath your feet you see a world of wilder mystery, where if you were smaller yet, you would just as soon forget this forest which you'd leave above, as you have left the home you love. For since the thyme you used to know seems a forest here below, what if you should sink again, and find there stretched a mighty plain between each grass blade and the next? You'd think till you were quite perplexed, especially if all the flowers that lit the sweet thyme forest bowers were in that wild transcendent change turned to temples great and strange, with many a pillared portal high, and domes that swelled against the sky. How foolish, then, you will agree, as those who think that all must see the world alike of those who scorn another who, perchance, was born, where in a different dream from theirs, what they call sins to him are prayers. We cannot judge, we cannot know, all things mingle, all things flow. There's only one thing constant here, love, that untranscendent sphere. Love that while all ages run, holds the wheeling world in one. Love that, as your sages tell, soars to heaven and sinks to hell. Even as he spoke, we seemed to grow. Smaller than thyme trees seemed to go. Farther away from us, new dreams flashed out on us with mystic gleams of mighty temple domes. Deep awe held us breathless as we saw a cavern portal glimmering out between new flowers that put to rout our other fancies. In sweet fear we tiptoed past and seemed to hear a sound of singing from within that told our souls of Peterkin. Our thoughts of him were still the same, however the shadows went and came, And so on we wandered hand in hand, and all the world was fairyland. And as we went, we seemed to hear, surging up from distant dells, a solemn music soft and clear, as if a field of lily bells were tolling altogether sweet, but sad and low, and keeping time to multitudinous marching feet with a slow funeral beat, and a dim harmonious chime that told us by its dark refrain the reason fairies suffered pain. And this is how the song went. Bear her along, keep ye your song tender and sweet and low. Fairies must die, ask ye not why, ye that have hurt her so. Passing away, flower from the spray, colour and light from the leaf. Soon, soon will the year shed its bloom on her briar and the dust of its dreams on our grief. Men upon earth bring us to birth gently at even and morn, when as brother and brother they greet one another and smile, then a fairy is born. But at each cruel word upon earth that is heard, each deed of unkindness or hate, some fairy must pass from the games in the grass and steal through the terrible gate. Passing away, flower from the spray, colour and light from the leaf. Soon, soon will the year shed its bloom on her briar, and the dust of its dream on our grief. If ye knew, all the wrong that we do, by the thought that ye harbour alone, how the face of some fairy grows wistful and weary, and the heart in her cold as a stone. Ah, she was born, blithe as the morn, under an April sky, born of the greeting of two lovers meeting, they parted, and so she must die. Pass away, flower from the spray, colour and light from the leaf. Soon, soon will the year shed its bloom on her bier, and the dust of its dream on our grief. Cradled in bliss, ye born of your kisses, O ye lovers that met by the moon, she would not have cried in the darkness and died, if ye had not forgotten so soon. Cruel mortals, they say, live for ever and aye, and they pray in the dark on their knees. But the flowers that are fled, and the loves that are dead, what heaven takes pity on these? Bear her along, singing your song, tender and sweet and low. Fairies must die, ask ye not why, ye that have hurt her so. Passing away, flower from the spray, colour and light from the leaf. Soon, soon will the year shed its bloom on her bier, and the dust of its dreams on our grief. Then we came through a glittering crystal grot, by a path like a pale moonbeam, and a broad blue bridge of forget-me-not over a shimmering stream, till where, though the deep blue dusk a gleam rose like the soul of the setting sun, and sunset breaking through the earth, a crimson sea of the poppies of dream, deep as the sleep that gave them birth, in the night where all earthly dreams are done. And then, like a pearl-pale port of the moon, faint and sweet as a starlight shrine, over the gloom of the crimson bloom, we saw the gates of ivory shine, and lulled and lured by the lullaby tune of the cradling airs that drowsily creep from blossom to blossom and lazily croon through the heart of the midnight's mystic noon, we came to the gates of the city of sleep. Faint and sweet as the lilies repose on the broad black breast of a midnight lake, the city delighted the cradling light. Like a straggling palace of cloud it rose. The towers were crowned with the crystal light, like the starry crown of a white snowflake, as they pierced in a wild white pinnacled crowd through the dusky wreaths of enchanted cloud that swirled all round like a witch's hair. And we heard as the sound of a great sea sighing, the sigh of the sleepless world of care, and we saw strange shadowy figures flying up to the ivory gates and beating, with pale hands long and famished and thin. Like blinded birds we saw them dash against the cruelly gleaming wall, we heard them wearily moan and call, with sharp starved lips, for ever entreating the pale doorkeeper to let them in. And still, as they beat again and again, we saw on the moon-pale lintels a splash of crimson blood like a poppy stain, or a wild red rose from the gardens of pain, that sigh all night like a ghostly sea, from the city of sleep to Gethsemane. And lo, as we near that mighty crowd, an old blind man came, crying aloud, to greet us as once the blind man cried in the Bible picture. You know, we tried to paint that print with his eastern sun, but the reds and the yellows would mix and run, and the blue of the sky made a horrible mess right over the edge of the Lord's white dress. And the old blind man, just as though he had eyes, came straight to meet us, and all the cries of the crowd were hushed, and a strange sweet calm stole through the air like a breath of the balm that was wafted abroad from the forest of thyme, for it rolled all around that curious clime, while its magical clouds of perfumed trees, and the blind man cried,
Our help is at hand! Oh, brother, remember the old command! Remember the frankincense and myrrh! Make way, for the little ones there! Make way, I have seen them afar, under a great white eastern star, for I am the mad, blind man who sees. Then he whispered softly, Of such as these.
And through the hush of the cloven crowd we passed to the gates of the city, and there our fairy heralds cried aloud,
Open your gates, don't stand and stare. These are the children from whom our king made all the star worlds dance in a ring.
And lo, like a sorrow that melts from the heart, in tears the slow gates melted apart. And into the city we passed like a dream, and then in one splendid marching stream, the whole of that host came following through. We were only children, just like you. Children, but we felt so grand as we led them, although we could understand nothing at all of the wonderful song that rose all around us as we marched along. And this is how that song went. You that have seen how the world and its glory change and grow old like the love of a friend, you that have come to the end of the story, you that were tired ere you came to the end, you that are weary of laughter and sorrow, pain and pleasure, labor and sin, sick of the midnight and dreading the morrow, come in. You that are bearing the load of the ages, you that have loved overmuch and too late, you that confute all the sores of the sages, you that served only because you must wait, knowing your work was a wasted endeavor, you that have lost and yet triumphed therein, and lost to your losses and triumph forever, come in. And we knew as we went up that twisted tree, with its violet shadows and pearl-pale walls, we were coming to something strange and sweet, for the dim air echoed with elfin calls, and far away, in the heart of the city, a murmur of laughter and revelry rose, a sound that was faint as the smile of pity, and sweet as a swan song's golden close. And then, once more, as we marched along, there surged around us that wonderful song, and it swung to the tramp of our marching feet, but it was tenderer now, and so sweet, that it made our eyes grow wet and blind, and the whole wide world seemed mother kind, folding us round with a gentle embrace and pressing our souls to her soft sweet face. And lo, a song was sung. Dreams, the memory blinding us, blinding our eyes to the way that we go, till the new sorrow come once more reminding us blindly of kind hearts, hours long ago. Mother mine, whisper we, yours was a love for me. Still, though our paths lie lone and apart, yours is the true love shining above for me. Yours are the kind eyes, hurting my heart. Dreams, how shall we sing of them? Dreams that we've loved with our head on our breast. Dreams, and the cradle's sweet swing of them. Aye, for her voice was the sound we loved best. Can we remember at all, or, forgetting it, can we recall for a moment the gleam of our childhood's delight and the wonder begetting it, wonder awakened in dreams of a dream? And once again from the heart of the city, a murmur of tenderer laughter rose, a sound that was faint as a smile of pity, and sweet as the swan song's golden close, and it seemed as if some wonderful fair were charming the night of the city of dreams, for over the mystical din out there, the clouds were litten with flickering gleams, and a rosette light like a day's first flush quivered and beat on the towers above, and we heard, through the curious crooning hush, an elfin song that we used to love. Little boy blue, come blow up your horn. And the soft wind blew it the other way. And all that we heard was cows in the corn. But we never heard anything half so gay. And ever we seemed to be drawing nearer. That mystical rosette smoke-wreathed glare, and the curious music grew louder and clearer, till Mustard Seed said, "We're lucky, you see. We've arrived at a time of festivity." And so to the end of the street we came, and turned a corner, and there we were, in a place that glowed like the dawn of day, a crowded, clamoring city square, like the cloudy heart of an opal aflame. With the lights of a great dream fair, thousands of children were gathered there, thousands of old men, weary and grey, and the shouts of the showmen filled the air. This way, this way, this way! And Seesaw, Marjorie Door, we heard a rollicking shout, as the swing boats hurtled over our heads to the tune of the roundabout. And Little Boy Blue, come blow up your horn, we heard the showman cry, and Dickory Dock, I'm as good as a clock, we heard the swings reply. This way to your heart's desire, come, cast your burdens down, and the pauper shall mount his throne in the skies, and the king be rid of his crown, and souls that were dead shall be fed with fire from the fount of their ancient pain, and your lost love come with the light in her eyes, back to your heart again. Ah, here be sure she shall never prove less kind that her eyes were bright. This way, to your old lost love, you shall kiss her lips tonight. This way for the smile of a dead man's face and the grip of a brother's hand. This way to your childhood's heart of grace and your home in fairyland. Dickory Dock, I'm as good as a clock. Do you hear my swivels chime? To and fro as I come and go, I keep eternal time. Oh, little Bo Peep, if you've lost your sheep and don't know where to find 'em, leave 'em alone and they'll come home and carry their tails behind 'em. And Seesaw, Marjorie Door, there came the chorusing shout, as the swing boats answered the roaring tune of the rollicking roundabout. Dickory, dickory, dickory dock, do you hear my swivels chime? Swing, swing, you're as good as a king if you keep eternal time. Then we saw that the tunes of the world were one, and the meter that guided the rhythmic sun was at one like the ebb and the flow of the sea, with the tunes that we learned at our mother's knee. The beat of the horses' hooves that carried us down to see the fine lady of Banbury Town. And so by the rhymes that we knew, we could tell, without knowing the others, that all was well. And then our brains began to spin, for it seemed as if that mighty din were no less than the cries of the poets and sages of all the nations in all the ages, and if they could only beat out the whole of their music together, the guardian and goal of the world would be reached with one mighty shout, and the dark dread secret of time be out. And nearer they seemed to climb, and madder and merrier rose the song, and the swings and the seesaws marked the time, for this was the maddest and merriest throng that ever was met on a holy day to dance the dance of the world away. And madder and merrier round and round the whirligigs whirled to the whirling sound, till it seemed that the mad song burst its bars and mixed with the song of the whirling stars, the song that the rhythmic time tides tell to seraphs in heaven and devils in hell. Aye, heaven and hell in accordant chime with the universal rhythm and rhyme, where, nearing the secret of space and time, the song of that ultimate mystery, which only the mad, blind men who see, led by the laugh of a little child, can utter, aye, wilder and yet more wild. It maddened, till now, full song it was out, it roared by the story roundabout. And this is how the song went. A child was born in Bethlehem, in Bethlehem, in Bethlehem. A child was born in Bethlehem. Ah, hear my fairy fable! For I have seen the King of Kings, no longer thronged with angel wings, but cradling like a little babe and cradled in a stable. The wise men came to greet him with the gifts of myrrh and frankincense. Gold and myrrh and frankincense they brought to make him mirth. And would you know the way to win to little brother Peterkin? My childhood's heart shall guide you through the glories of the earth. A child was born in Bethlehem, in Bethlehem, in Bethlehem. The wise men came to welcome him. A star stood o'er the gable, and there they saw the King of Kings, no longer thronged with angel wings, but cradling like a little babe and cradled in a stable. And creeping through the music, once again the fairy cry came freezing o'er the snowy towers to lead us on to Peterkin. Once more the fairy bugles blew from lands beyond the sky, and we all groped out together, dazed and blind, we knew not why. Out through the city's farther gates we went to look for Peterkin, out into the dark unknown, and heard the clamour die, far, far away behind us as we trotted on to Peterkin. Then once more along the rare forest paths we groped our way. Here the glowworm's league-long glare turned the wild-thyme night to day. There we passed a sort of whale, 60 feet in length or more, but we knew it was a snail, even when we heard it snore. Often through the clamorous gloom, almost on the top of us, we beheld a beetle loom, like a hippopotamus. Once or twice a spotted toad, like a mountain, wobbled by, with a rolling moon that glowed through the skin fringe of its eye. Once a caterpillar bowed down a leaf of Yggdrasil, like a sunset-coloured cloud sleeping on a quiet hill. Once we came upon a moth, fast asleep with outspread wings, like a mighty tissued cloth woven for the feet of kings. There above the wood in state, many a temple dome that glows delicately like a great rainbow-coloured bubble rose. Though they were but flowers on earth, oh, we dared not enter in, for in that divine rebirth, less than awe, we were more than sin. Yet their mystic anthems came sweetly to our listening ears, and their burden was the same, no more sorrow, no more tears. Whither Peterkin has gone, you assuredly shall go. When your wanderings are done, all he knows, you, too, shall know. So we thought we'd onward roam, till earth's smallest flower appeared, with a less tremendous dome, less divinely to be feared. Then, perchance, if we should dare timidly to enter in, might some kindly doorkeeper give us news of Peterkin? At last we saw a crimson porch, far away like a dull red torch, burning in the purple gloom, and a great ocean of perfume rolled round us as we drew anear, and then we strangely seemed to hear the shadow of the mighty psalm, a sound as if a golden sea of music swung in utter calm against the shores of eternity, and then we saw the mighty dome of some mysterious temple tower on high, and knew that we had come at last to that sweet house of grace, which wise men find in every place, the temple of the smallest flower. And there, alas, our fairy friends whispered,
"Here our kingdom ends. You must enter in alone, but your souls will surely show whither Peterkin is gone, and the road that you must go. We poor fairies have no souls. Hark, the warning harebell tolls.
So,
Goodbye, goodbye,
they said.
dear little seekers for the dead."
They vanished, but as they went, we heard their voices softly blent in some mysterious fairy song that seemed to make us wise and strong, for it was like the holy calm that fills the bosomed rose with balm, or blessings that the twilight breathes, where the honeysuckle wreaths between young lovers and the sky, as on banks of flowers they lie, and with wings of rose and green, laughing fairies pass unseen, singing their sweet lullaby, lulla, lulla, lullaby. Ah, good night with lullaby. Only a flower, those carven walls, those cornices and coronals, the splendid crimson porch, the thin strange sounds of singing from within. Through the scented arch we stepped, pushed back the soft metallic door, and down the velvet aisles we crept. Was it a flower? No more. For one of the voices that we heard, a child's voice, clear as the voice of a bird. Was it not? Nay, it could not be. And a woman's voice that tenderly answered him in fond refrain. and pierced our heart with sweet, sweet pain, as if dear Mary Mother hung above some little child and sung, between the waves of that golden sea, the cradle songs of eternity, and while in her deep smile he basked, answered whatsoever he asked. What is there hid in the heart of a rose, mother mine? Ah, who knows, who knows, who knows? A man that died on a lonely hill may tell you perhaps, but none other will, little child. What does it take to make a rose, mother mine? The God that died to make it knows. It takes the world's eternal wars. It takes the moon and all the stars. It takes the might of heaven and hell, and the everlasting love as well, little child. But there in one great shrine apart, within the temple's holiest heart, we came upon a blinding light, suddenly, and a burning throne of pinnacled glory wild and white. We could not see who reigned thereon, for all at once, as a woodbird sings, the aisles were full of great white wings, row above mystic burning row. And through the splendor and the glow, we saw 4 angels great and sweet, with outspread wings and folded feet, come gliding down from a heaven within, the golden heart of paradise, and in their hands with laughing eyes lay little brother Peterkin. And all around the temple of the smallest of the flowers, the glory of the angels made a star for little Peterkin. For all the kings of splendor and all the heavenly powers were gathered there together in the fairy forest bowers, with all their globed and radiant wings to make a star for Peterkin, the star that shone upon the east, a star that still is ours, whene'er we hang our stockings up, a star of wings for Peterkin. Then all in one great flash was gone. A voice cried, "Hush, all is well," and we stood dreaming there alone. In darkness, who can tell the mystic quiet that we felt, as if the woods in worship knelt? Far off we heard a bell, tolling strange human folk to prayer through fields of sunset-colored air. And then a voice. "Why, here they are!" And as it seemed, we woke. The sweet old skies, great star by star, upon our vision broke. Field over field of heavenly blue rose o'er us. Then a voice we knew softly and gently spoke. "See, they are sleeping by the side of that dear little one who died." We told, dear father, all our tale that night before we went to bed, and at the end his face grew pale, and he bent over us and said, "Was it not strange? He too was there, a weary, weary watch to keep before the gates of the city of sleep. But ere we came, he did not dare, even to dream of entering in, or even to hope for Peterkin. He was the poor blind man," he said, and we, how low he bent his head. Then he called mother near, and lo, he whispered to us, "Prompt me now, for I forget that song we heard, but you remember every word." Then memory came like a breaking morn, and we breathed it to him. A child was born, and there he drew us to his breast, and softly murmured all the rest.
The wise men came to greet him with their gifts of myrrh and frankincense. Gold and myrrh and frankincense they brought to make him mirth. And would you know the way to win to little brother Peterkin? My childhood's heart shall guide you through the glories of the earth.
Then he looked up, and mother knelt beside us. Oh, her eyes were bright. Her arms were like a lovely belt, all round us as we said good night. To father, he was crying now, but they were happy tears somehow. For there we saw dear mother lay her cheek against his cheek and say, "Hush, let me kiss those tears away." And this is the entirety of the story, but there is a dedication. a dedication written by Alfred Noyes, and I want to share that with you all. What can a wanderer bring? Two little ones loved like you. You have songs of your own to sing that are far more steadfast and true, crumbs of pity for birds that flit o'er your sun-swept lawn, songs that are dearer than all our words with a love that is clear as the dawn. What should a dreamer devise in the depths of his wayward will to deepen the gleam of your eyes? Who can dance with the sun-child still? Yet you glanced on his lonely way, you cheered him in dream and deed, and his heart is overflowing, overflowing today with a love that you never will need. What can a pilgrim teach to dwellers in fairyland? Truth that excels all speech, you murmur and understand. All he can sing you he brings, but one thing more, if he may, one thing more that the King of Kings will take from the child on the way. Yet how can a child of the night brighten the light of the sun? How can he add a delight to the dances that never are done? Ah, what if he struggles to turn once more to the sweet old skies, with praise and praise from the fetters that burn, to the God that brightened your eyes? Yes, he is weak, he will fail, yet what if in sorrows apart, one thing one should avail? The cry of a grateful heart. It has wings, they return through the night, to a sky where the light lives yet, to the clouds that kneel on his mountain height, and the path that his feet forget. What if he struggles and still fails and struggles again? What if his broken will whispers the struggles in vain? Once at least he has risen, because he remembered your eyes. Once they have brought to his earthly prison the passion of paradise. Kind little eyes that I love, eyes forgetful of mine, in a dream I am bending above your sleep, and you open and shine. And I know as my own grow blind, with a lonely prayer for your sake, he will hear even me, little eyes that were kind. God bless you, asleep or awake. And there is a note published by the Macmillan Company on 64 and 66 Fifth Avenue, New York. Imagination, the capacity to perceive vividly and feel sincerely, and the gift of fit and beautiful expression in verse form. If these may be taken as the equipment of a poet, nearly all of this volume is poetry. And if to the sum of these be added the indescribable increment of charm which comes occasionally to the work of some poet, quite unearned by any of these catalogued qualities of his, you have a fair measure of Mr. Noyes at his best. Two considerations render Mr. Noyes interesting above most poets: the wonderful degree in which the personal charm illumines what he has already written, and the surprises which one feels may be in store in his future work. His feelings have already so much variety and so much apparent sincerity that it is impossible to tell in what direction his genius will develop. In whatever style he writes, the mystical, the historical dramatic, the impassioned description of natural beauty, the ballad, the love lyric, he has the peculiarity of seeming in each style to have found the truest expression of himself. This was the notes provided by Louisville Courier-Journal, a review of Alfred Noyes' poetry. Well, listeners, talk about a sad ending, right? Finding poor Peterkin, his body. The poor little guy had passed on. But at least through the entire adventure, they were able to find out what happened to Peterkin and get some kind of closure for the family. The crazy part about the last chapter is that Alfred Noyes titled it Happy Endings. Goodness. Mates, I hope you really enjoyed this entire volume of Alfred Noyes' poetry, because I loved it. And now that I've done a fair bit of this kind of content, I'm going to jump right back into horror next week. Maybe some Let's Not Meet, some Books from the Shadows, perhaps even Beggars Can't Be Choosers, which aren't creepy but more or less strange. Stuff like that, so stick with me then. If you have any recommendations as well, send them my way via email, storiesfablesghostlytales@gmail.com, and also We'll have some more stories from Tom Keithley coming up as well. He's been working hard and sending me multitudes of his story, and you lovelies know how I love supporting creative writers, so expect to hear some stories involving Lilitu coming up. Folks, if you like what I do, as always, subscribe and share, and if you feel like you could contribute to the show's production costs, then swing on over to my Patreon page where you can send the love. Every bit you lovelies donate goes 100% back into production and nowhere else. Check it out when you have some time at www.patreon.com/SFGT. Now I want to use this time to thank my Patreons. First up is my queen of all that is fairy and majestic, the queen of cats, Maya, the goddess that wraps me in bubble wrap and shoots me and my equipment to the moon and back. To show me they care, Maya, I've been looking at further streamlining my workflow and looking at why old-time radio episodes tend to break up a lot more. And as I progress through Sherlock Holmes, I'm learning a lot about what plagues those kind of OTRs. As a result, I think I can push it even further next Monday. So when you listen to it then, Maya, hopefully I could get even more clarity for you. Thank you so much, mate, for supporting me as you always do. And as always, I'm super duper grateful for your tier of support. All of us benefit thanks to you. You're bloody marvelous. My wonderfully brilliant white tea warlord, Leza of Loxley Bower. Mate, thanks to you, I've been able to update my registration for security on the website, and I've also been able to update some of my plugins that I use to clean up my audio. I ran into an issue recently with audio popping, and I think I might be able to remedy some of that through the plugins that I've got. We'll see. Cheers, mate, for helping me streamline my workflow. You are awesome. And wondrous wizardess, Paige Kramer. Expect an email from me this weekend, awesomest Pagemus. I tend to read emails multiple times and then run out of time to respond. Go figure, right? But I'm looking forward to putting time aside this weekend to respond, talking to my listeners and my supporters. Legit brightens up my week, so I'm eager to sink my teeth into it. And thank you so much, Paige, for your support as always. You put a pep in my bouncy step. Thank you. And the enforcers that supercharged this podcast, I am lucky to have. Chad Warren, Just Heather, Juicebox Andy, Peter Raffelli, Dolphin and Cow, Michelangelo, Yokone, Tea Time Drinker 1, and Divided by 0. Thank you all so much. You're bloody superstars, every single one of you. Now, have a wonderful weekend. I can't wait till next week's scary stories, or different or strange stories. And as always, till next we meet.